I figure, dude, I think last time, and honestly, we could just jump into it. Last time we spoke, you hadn't yet released the type recurrent signal, and then single, excuse me, and then the remix with Cohen, and that is like, I'm glad we're doing this podcast now, dude, because that's like such a beautiful track, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It had some nice support. Support. I think it's doing quite well.
Yeah.
Didn't turn out to be a big hit yet, but that's okay as well. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. And of course, Kine was also some of the guys I've been following for a while, since he did his first EP on Leone's imprint. So I was really happy he was willing to do a remix. Apparently he doesn't do them. He barely ever does them. So and with my track, he got the inspiration. So I think, I was kind of honored by that as well. So now I'm really happy with the result. And again, it did quite well, and it's still doing quite well on Spotify as well. So I'm happy. Yeah.
Dude, I completely understand, man. It is really beautiful. I of course I follow your music. The way I first heard of you was through the releases on This Never Happened, and that's how I learned of Cohen and these other producers as well. But so that's where I first heard your music, and I've been following because you and I chat over Instagram every once in a while and such, and I keep up with your music. But when I heard that, man, oh my God, dude, it is such a beautiful track. So yeah, that must be really exciting. You got some new music, and I know for 2019 you have a lot of music out. I mean, I went and kind of prepared. A lot of times I'll speak with producers and they'll have a couple tracks out for the year, which is awesome. But dude, you're like ripping them out.
Yeah, I'm quite productive. I don't know if it's a good thing. Maybe I should tune it down a bit. But but yeah, we talk. It's a shame. Maybe for the listeners, we did an interview before this, but the audio got lost. So we actually have an hour and a half of conversation that nobody will ever be able to listen to.
I know. We just got to know each other really well.
We just got to know each other really well, which was fun as well.
Yeah.
But I'm quite productive when I'm in the studio. As I explained the first time, I work full time next to the music as well. But I get a ton of ideas when I'm out of the studio. So when I'm in the studio, I'm usually really focused, and I have some ideas actually written down, or I whistled something in my microphone, or have some songs that I've written down that had some cool chords or a cool bass line or some element that I liked. So I usually have a ton of ideas when I go into the studio, and when I'm there, I'm quite productive. So I produce quite a lot of tracks for the amount of studio time I get, and I just have a list of. I had a ton of labels that I really liked and that I wanted to release music on, and I think that bucket list is becoming shorter and shorter really fast. So that's really cool. I'm really happy with what's happened so far this year and what's yet to come this year.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. And I love that because I found that with myself. I have friends in my life who will kind of come up with like, I'm so busy with my work schedule, I couldn't pick up this or that, like a passion project or something that I really want to work on outside of work just because I don't have the time. But, the way you've expressed it is like, you want to get this done, even though you have the work grind, which almost all of us do. I do as well. I'm there 8 to 5, but finding the time outside work to be really dedicated and find that time to get it to kind of get in the studio, make sure that time is productive is really admirable because it can be done. It can be done.
Yeah, thanks, man. But I think you recognize it. I mean, where are you supposed to be right now?
Yeah, hopefully no one from my work listens to this, but this is my lunch hour. That's why I'm drinking coffee, not beer.
Very nice, man. No, but I agree. But I think if you have a real passion, then it only feels natural to pursue it. But sometimes my environment and of course my friends, my family, and my girlfriend are not always happy with it, because it takes a lot of time. On the other hand, I don't have to burden my creativity with the financial constraint of having to live from it yet.
Right.
Of course, I want to at some point, but I don't have to right now, which also takes a bit of the stress out, I think, creatively once I am in the studio.
Yeah, exactly. You can kind of do exactly what you want to do in terms of the music you make, because this is... I mean, this is something that comes up from time to time, but a lot of times there's kind of a couple paths, especially starting out and taking music full time, is either, ghost producing, which is okay. It's you're a person still able to work on music, but then sometimes it's not the music they really want to make, or if you feel like, okay, I really want to make this as a career, sometimes you won't be true to yourself in the music you'll make. You'll kind of try and, I would guess, I would assume, like, if you have that financial burden, the music you make would start to change a little bit because you feel like it has to fit in a certain box. It has to, do well. This way you can be completely honest and true to yourself and really make your unique sound. And then, boom, you get, in 2019, you're releasing, and you have previously, but you're releasing on labels that like are on this bucket list. So, I mean, it's a perfect path. It's the way to do it. Yeah,
I'm really happy with it, and I think I saw a clip of an interview you did with Matt Lang. I think last week or the week before that, and he explained very nicely that I think once you have to live from your creativity, and the creative stuff starts to becoming the thing you're dependent on to financially, to pay the bills, to pay your house, to pay your food, then the dynamic in the studio becomes totally different. So I completely agree with you. That stuff I don't have to think about. I do think that every producer, even also myself, we always listen to what is being produced out there and where something would fit and where it wouldn't fit. I mean, it's something you have to do if you want to get anywhere. And of course, you catch your really lucky break. You do it all from the head and you create something totally strange and that's nothing that's ever been heard before, and it becomes a big hit. That could happen as well, and that would be ideal. But usually, most producers, also myself, I try to fit in a certain style, and I think right now you would call it just melodic house, a little bit of that This Never Happened kind of sound, a bit trancy melodic progressive house. So you try to fit in, but you try to add your own flavor to that, and I think if you can do that as an artist, and it sounds good, and it sounds unique and it sounds like you, I think that you're on a good track.
I think I totally agree. I go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, when I listen to podcasts, sometimes, of course, you have that Lane 8 mixtape that comes out every now and then, and I can just hear, and I think a lot of fans do as well, you can just hear the new tracks, the ideas, and you have a very good idea from which artist it probably is, and then I think that you're on a good track. You go, oh man, this is so typical Enamor, or this is so typical Kain, or this is so typical Ryland Taggart. You can just hear it, or Avor, which also has a very unique sound. That's basically what I wanted to say.
I totally agree, and I think that's such a beautiful aspect of electronic music, because I think from an outside perspective, they might, a person who doesn't maybe listen to electronic music will say, oh, EDM, and it's like, okay, wait, hold on. And then even when you get within these sub-genres, like deep melodic house or melodic house, a person can think, if they don't maybe listen to that style, like, oh, okay, it all kind of has this specific sound. But really, as you mentioned, like when Lane 8 puts out a mixtape and you can pick up on those subtleties that are of that specific artist. And that's that, you're right on. That's when it really shows that artist is on to something, where they've really kind of carved out this unique sound, and it's great because then everyone gets kind of the same playing field. If someone writes in a specific genre, there are certain, techniques and sounds that are common in that genre, but then that whatever it is unique to that person comes through, and then you have a new little branch, and that's
exactly
amazing.
Exactly. And I think also something we discussed the last time, so it's a little bit of repetitive, but it's, of course, for the listeners it will be the first time. But as we discussed, I think the sound that I do and that a lot of those artists that I mentioned do right now is really uprising, especially in the US, in places like New York and stuff, which is really ahead when it comes to this kind of music. And I think I think even in the Netherlands, people are growing perhaps a little bit tired of the standard techno drum code sound. So yeah, I think I'm currently riding on a wave of new artists and a new sound that is catching up really well. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's so much good music. I do a podcast every month, like 90 minutes, and I never use a track twice. And every month again, it's like choosing from 50 tracks that I like and make a selection of 20 or 22 or something. So there's a lot of good stuff at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention that. Yeah, your podcast where Deep Down, right? Deep Down Show, where it's as you mentioned, 90 minutes of tracks from melodic house artists. It is exactly as you mentioned. It's all such high caliber music, but there's such good music out there right now, and this genre is I agree as well, picking up. It's gaining a lot of recognition. I mean. I'm not sure if last time we spoke I'd been yet or not. I don't think so, but I saw Lane 8 play in California a couple months ago, and he headlined, and he's really gaining so much popularity, and the sound is so many people resonating with this specific sound that he's kind of carved out, and then everyone in the This Never Happened realm is carving out, and it's amazing to see because I love it. I'm just such a big fan of, and it's funny, my girlfriend's totally opposite. Like, I'm such a big fan of beautiful melody. She's like very into techno, so not as much, and that's okay. But I love that there's this genre that's gaining so much popularity where it's the melodies are beautiful. It's I don't know. I love it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, me too. And techno can be nice as well.
Yeah.
But no, but I agree. I mean, guys like Lane 8, he sold it with This Never Happened tool. He sold out the Mirage in New York like a few weeks ago. I think that's pretty amazing. So I think good stuff is happening for electronic music right now. America is also finally ready for a little bit more mature sound than just EDM, and the standard Afrojack Hardwell house. So which is great for artists that are in a more niche genre, such as myself and a lot of others. So yeah.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think there are more venues now popping up or not venues, but festivals and such that do support that. Like, I know, I'm actually not sure how old it is, but I went to I don't even want to call it festival, but we went to a gathering of artists called Crossed in San Diego a few months ago, and that's where Lane 8 was headlining. But you're right. I mean, it's like such a lot of support from the people that come to see the artists, but it's more niche genres now, which is really cool to see, and it's stuff that I love to listen to, and I think there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way, and it's really cool to see, and it's so cool also that you had this ability to start releasing on labels like This Never Happened. You meet Cohen, and now you guys are working together in a sense where he's remixing the track, and you meet people in this world, and it's just growing and growing, and it's really great to see, man.
Yeah, it's really.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's really nice. Like, I mean, Lane 8, Daniel was one of the first big guys who really started, at least one of the first big international guys that started supporting my music in a very early stage, and he kept on supporting my tracks for the first time in his mixtape for a few years even, and at some point finally he asked me if I wanted to do something for his label as well, which of course I was very much looking forward to when he was finally asked the question, and it was like over a year ago already, and we had to wait quite a while, and we had the first Root to Branch that came out last December, I think, at the end of the year, and right now in August I can give you a heads up, we're doing a full EP.
Oh, awesome, man.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's got to be so exciting.
Yeah, looking very much forward to it. Yeah, it's going to be probably a 4-tracker, so all tested by himself. So and there's actually 2 of them in his latest mixtape. So
okay.
So yeah, that's really nice. I'm really happy with that and with his support. I think as an upcoming artist, you need a few people. You need a few people who consequently back you and develop you as an artist. And to me, he definitely has been a major influence on my development as a producer. And he's one of the guys that gives very extensive feedback and gave me a ton of advice that made my tracks better. So that's quite rare actually to find that.
That's what I've heard. I've known from other people sending into labels and hearing nothing. And even labels that support the artist in terms of putting out putting out some tracks. It's oftentimes communication with A&R, but Daniel has direct contact with the artist, which is so amazing. Yeah. And from everything I've heard, people will send music and he gets back to everyone, even new people that send him music and are interested in either getting his feedback or releasing on This Never Happened or whatnot. He's really good about that. And there's so much I really appreciate about that, because, I think that the music industry is kind of going in this interesting direction, and he seems to be taking it in a very refreshing, unique way in terms of supporting young up-and-coming artists, having this direct connection and communication with them, really supporting them at an early age. And then also how he treats like the summer gatherings where there's no cell phones. He just said he's starting a newsletter because he wants to really communicate with his fans more intimately. Like, all these different things are so important, man. And it's just every time I hear something come up, like, oh, that's so refreshing. Yeah,
definitely. I think he's one of the few who did very well in creating an island of his own, and really directly connecting with his fans without too much hoo-ha in the middle.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the fact indeed that he directly reacts to his fans and to aspiring producers. That's very helpful. Yeah, that's all I can say. Yeah.
Oh yeah. For newer producers out there, I mean, you've now kind of been through it. Starting out, really working very hard to put out great music. But then, how much of this would you say for newer guys starting out is that working with people that are kind of in your corner? I mean, you kind of mentioned that before, of being important. I mean, what level of that is there?
I think it's actually fairly. To be honest, it's not too much. It's fairly minimal. I think to produce music and to keep on producing music when it gets hard, and to really follow through to get to a level that takes quite some dedication. At least it took for me. I think it's quite a lonely process, and that's why I think it's not meant for everybody. So connecting with other DJs is important, but for me it came at quite a late stage, maybe too late even. Maybe I should have started a bit sooner with that. But I'm personally not the biggest networker, to be honest. And I always had this philosophy of we'll just have to let the music speak. When I'm when I'm good enough, people will notice. So perhaps that's why it took a little bit longer for me. I mean, if any aspiring producer who's listening to the podcast, I'm definitely not the most talented guy out there. I'm not one of those guys who started making music 3 months ago and had a big break and Lane 8 plays my music and I get a release. No. The whole process before that is years and years of rejections and people telling you your music's not good enough. And to be honest, in hindsight, it wasn't good enough, but it's something you work tirelessly on, and then it's very hard to hear that it's not good. What do you mean it's not good? I mean, I worked hours and days on this, and I cannot imagine that it's not good. But if you listen to it 2 years later, then okay, you kind of agreed it wasn't that good. So any aspiring producer, I would say, reference the hell out of your tracks. Spend a ton of hours into your music, into your passion, if it is. And once it's good enough, or once it's closely to good enough, you'll start getting more responses from label A&Rs that you send it to, other DJs. And, I think, most of the advice you can read on the internet, but always send a personalized email. Don't send it to 20 people at once. I mean, try to find out via maybe connections an actual email address from a person rather than a general info at whateverdj.net email address. And at some point the music will reach a level that it's good enough. At least that happened for me. I mean, there was a point that 99% I didn't get any responses on my music, to a point where 1 in 3 times I got a response, but then just it's not good enough, or it needs this, or it needs more that. To a point where I got some first real actual responses from some DJs. For me in the Netherlands, Oliver Weider. I don't know if you know him. He has a label called Weiter, and it's also a small label, but it's respected within the house music community. And he was one of the first guys that responded to one of my tracks, and he said, "Whoa, this is so great! I want to sign this track immediately," and a ton of feedback, on how to make some stuff better, and that gave me a boost of confidence, and that got me my first bigger release. And then after that, releasing on new labels became a little bit more easy because I had my first track record, and people and A&R saw my name for the first time, in the promo releases and stuff, which made it a little bit easier. But even after that, and still. You still get rejections on your music, and there's still a ton of labels that don't respond, or just say no, not for us, or even they'll even say if it's shit. I mean, you still get that. It's a never-ending process. But wow, I notice when I'm talking in a different language, I have the custom to keep on babbling.
No.
But what I meant to say to aspiring producers, I mean, it's not about how much you do with other artists, and it's not about being the perfect networker. But for me, and maybe I'm saying this because for me it took quite some effort, maybe because I am not the most talented guy, but it's really the amount of effort that you put into it.
Yeah.
When I look at producers around me who are or doing not so well or who have quit, are always the people who stopped at a point where I didn't stop. So keep on persevering, and never let anyone tell you that that is shit or that you'll never make it. Nobody will say that, but don't let that feeling take over. And keep working hard. Dude. I mean, and at some point it becomes easier and easier, because when you want to network, you can let the music speak for itself a bit, and people have to know your name. Oh, you're that guy. Oh yeah, I've seen one of your releases, or I played one of your tracks, or something nice, and it becomes easier. And when you do stuff for like a label, like Leone's label, and talking about that again, but then you connect also more easy with the other artists who've released there, and you start sending each other your music and start evaluating it. And so you have some expert opinions on your music, and you exchange some advice. So yeah, once you're in a good flow, then you still get rejections, but it becomes easier in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I love that, because it's something that I love to talk about on this podcast, because I think, especially for myself, it can be really, especially when I was starting out, and I just didn't know anyone making music, and you don't know anyone, and you don't know what the process is like at all. And especially when I was very, very young listening to music, I was under the impression that some people were good, and then it was just this like instant process, and it's not that way. Everyone works really, really hard, and it takes that perseverance and working through the rejection. And also when you find that over time more people know of your tracks, and more people are, they know of you because they're like, hey, we played your track or whatever that is, they've all gone through that process too. So now you're kind of in this group of people that know, like, we've all gone through it, we've worked really, really hard to get here, and you're almost like, it's almost like a rite of passage a little bit, just to work hard and get and kind of at least push through that process,
Definitely. I mean, I studied, I did a university, I actually worked full time in finance. I did a master in finance. I did real job interviews. talking about real jobs. I'm doing well, but really nothing was for me as hard, but also rewarding as taking my musical career to the next step. I mean, I think that was the hardest thing, but also the most rewarding thing when it comes to career-wise. I think for me it was definitely harder. I had a lot more rejections in music than I did in my normal societal life, working for an airline. So definitely, it's not something I also had. And I think also everybody knows some of those examples, Martin Garrix, who made a hit when he was 16, and
Uh-huh.
now he's best friends with Justin Bieber, you know. And a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
people
yeah.
have the notion, oh, you make me house music. Oh, just make a hit, put it on SoundCloud or on
Right.
Spotify or whatever, and when it's good enough, when it's catchy enough, you'll make
Uh-huh.
it. You know, you're there, but
Right.
it doesn't happen.
No, 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 no. Yeah, and people look, I think from an outside perspective too, when people listen to electronic music, they'll listen to something like, I don't know, Animals from Martin Garrix, and then, oh, if I wanted to, I could write that. It's so easy. Just go do that and blow up, but it's not. I mean, when you actually start working on music, you realize how challenging it really is to make everything fit well within a mix. It's so complicated. But I think from an outside perspective, it can just be like, oh, go write that song and be famous. It's like, well, if
Yeah,
it was as easy as that, everyone would be doing that. But
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time, I think after we spoke, I looked more into Martin Garrix because I don't know how this came up, I forget, but I was looking at the song rights for his music, and that "Scared to Be Lonely" was written by a pretty well-known producer. So he
Yeah.
was, ghostwriting the whole. But I saw for Animals too, the same guy was on that track. So I don't even know like what the distribution was for where that. I mean, he had to get picked up somewhere. Something had to really start that. But I looked at the rights for that track too, and he had some other producers that were on the rights for that song. So I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't
but
know.
it,
I don't know either. But nothing but respect
yeah,
for the guy. And I think
totally.
he already ghost produced a hit track before he did Animals, and that's how
Oh
he got in
yeah,
the
yeah,
spotlights. And of course, he has a very big team behind him. Blah blah blah. But in the end, you can't get that far without being very very good. So nothing
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
nothing
No,
nothing but respect for the
yeah,
guy. It's not a
100%.
boy
Yeah,
anymore. But
yeah,
but yeah, of course. I mean, and also with music, having a good team behind you helps. And
yeah.
when you're where you're trying to make it in a more niche house, getting the right representation is harder. There are not as
Mhm.
there's not enough. There's not as much parties or venues to play at.
Mhm.
So the competition is also more stiff in that way. Um, so it's not easy. It's not easy to get to a point where you're booked every week and you play the whole world. So yeah,
Yeah.
great respect to the ones who make that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. But I love having this conversation now because I just see that as we've been speaking about, seeing this genre gain more exposure and gain more popularity. I mean, that's so cool because you found something that you really love and you've been able to grow within this sound. And at the same time you see that it's gaining more popularity worldwide, and it's just I just see it as being this very it's going to be a very interesting path too to see kind of where this goes moving forward, and to see that now you have the full release coming on This Never Happened. I mean, it's going to be awesome, man. I'm very excited.
Thanks, man. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I remember when we were speaking before, I think it was kind of towards the end, we were talking about learning this process because you as you mentioned spent a long time early on really focusing on your craft, understanding how to produce properly and dedicating so much time to that. And I remember we were talking about the idea of kind of reworking tracks as a way to get better.
Yeah.
It was something I was doing at the time. And yeah, I mean, for starting out, what was that process like? Like, how did you, I think you were in college, right? When you started just working on tracks here and
Yeah.
there? Yeah.
I started when I was in college, and of course, when you're in college and you're a student and you don't work next to being in college, you have a lot of spare time. And I was
Yeah.
already really into electronic music, especially some of the harder stuff, actually, the Dutch stuff, like hardstyle and
Mm-hmm.
hardcore, which I still like, but I don't produce. But I had spare time, and I started messing around with Fruity Loops, like anyone. And yeah, of course, it sounded like shit, but at some point, it started to sound like music. So I went and followed through with it, and I became obsessed with it really, really fast. And yeah, I think I started like probably 7 years ago by now, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe, yeah, 7 years probably. And of course, already by then you had a lot of stuff on YouTube. I mean, you don't need that professional to help you to learn to produce music when you can find everything on YouTube. It might take a little bit longer because you don't know what you're looking for in the beginning, but you can find anything. So I started to educate myself. And I think also what we discussed last time is if I had known sooner, or if I wouldn't have been that stubborn, I would have started to use reference tracks. So literally copying another track into your project and just copying every sound there is in that and trying to reproduce it. But because it doesn't only help you to learn how to create sounds or finding that perfect preset or whatever, or learning the difference between a saw wave and a square wave and what filters do and so forth, but it also helps you to mix. Because if you just compare, if you put a track in your project and you compare how loud that hi-hat is or how full that lead sound is, you'll be able to listen to more in your own track if everything is in balance or not. And I started to do that way too late. And I think if I started doing that a year and a half sooner, then I would have been a lot better by now already. Because when you're a musician, you're also a little bit stubborn. And I can do it myself, and I want to use my own inspiration. I don't want to recreate any arrangement. But if you just recreate the elements, but use your own melodies, your own heads, your own sounds, then still it helps.
Oh yeah.
And I usually also something for, not for non-producers but for producers, I just import 3 different tracks in my 3 different reference tracks in my projects, and every track is mixed differently, has a different way, and in some tracks the bass is a little bit louder, and some tracks the lead is a little bit more present, some tracks have a little bit more groove, and if you mix somewhere in between, then you always have some kind of a right balance, and you can make it a little bit your own.
I see. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. So as much as the, understanding, as you mentioned, like understanding how to do the sound design and what the composition process is like, and then that's going to really help for, understanding the VSTs that you're leveraging, but also in the mix too, that, because it's funny, as you mentioned that too. I mean, it makes perfect sense. You can write something melodically that sounds nice, but if it's not sitting properly in the track, it might even be a junk track. You might, I don't know what to do with it, because you don't understand that mixing and mastering process enough to have it sit right, and then you see kind of where it can go.
Definitely, and from an arrangement point of view, if you've written a beautiful melody, but if it just loops and loops through the entire track, you could get tired of it. So you could even use other tracks to get ideas to arrange it, in a proper way. Where should the break from? How should I do the build down? How did they do it in that similar track with the similar kind of melody but with a different sound? How did they do it over there? Maybe I can copy some of those ideas. I mean, house music, in my opinion, it's also something we talked about before, but it's all about creative stealing and make it your own twist ideas. But I mean, my own ideas are rarely fully original. I mean, most of the time it's something from another track, an element that I liked, and I recreate it with my own twist, and then I have some kind of confidence that it's a good idea because it's already been somewhere in a different track that is proven, and so that helps for me. Actually, Type Recurrent, the track we referred to that came out for me, the melody is actually from a really, really, really loud hardcore track, some kind of anthem here in the Netherlands, and it had some kind of dark melody, and I loved it, so I took it down from 200 BPM to 120 and switched some notes up, and and voila, and I had exactly that feeling that the hardcore track had in that break sound, and I got to reproduce it for something more within my own genre.
Oh, that's cool.
Weird little darker vibe. So the inspiration comes from anything. I get it from a lot from film music, but even from hardcore, sometimes from pop music, sometimes from from anything basically.
Yeah, dude. Well, I love that because I mean, if you look at the foundation of so much music is based on very common chord progressions, and then in each genre there are there's a lot of commonalities, right? So there are so many kind of foundational blocks that you're starting with, but it's those the subtleties and the differences, like the slight variations in melody and such, that will take a track from being, you know, kind of a start to something very, very special. You know, it's just those tiny tweaks, you know. And
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, all the basic chords have been done, but it's all about how you twist it in a way that you can create the feeling that you like. If you want to create a track that's nice to listen to, or if you want to create a more club-oriented or festival-oriented track. I mean, melody-wise, most stuff has been done, but it's all about the right sound or the right particularities in a track that you create. You know, often producers call them happy mistakes. That is what happens. You know, you put an unintentional note somewhere and it hits, and it's, hey, what was that strange sound? Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen, but it sounds great. So we'll leave it there. It makes it unique, and I think a lot of producers can relate to that.
Yeah, dude. There's a funny example of that. I forget the producer's name who wrote that. I should know this, but there's a track called. Do you know that song? It's from like 10 years ago. G6.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That's why I like a G6. Yeah. So there was he was the producer who wrote that song. I should know the name, but he was doing
Kashmir, right? I think
Kashmir. Yeah. Kashmir. Yeah. He was doing a talk where he was talking about happy mistakes like that. And that melody was supposed to be it was supposed to be for like a different lead or something. And he had this tracks laid out in his DAW, and he pulled that melody unintentionally into another track that was designed for something totally different, you know. He hears that melody, and it's like with the correct sound design, he was like, oh, totally a happy mistake, but he knew this was it. Like, and then that song, you know, as simple as that melody is, became an ultra hit, you know, and that's what it is. These happy melody or happy mistakes, excuse me. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I mean, those are the most fun ideas and the most creative ideas, obviously. Yeah. And those are the ideas when you're on a dance floor that you often think, wow, this sounds insane. How did he get the idea for this? And often it's not an idea. Often it's like just playing around and finding a strange little sound or a strange little loop or a misplaced note in a melody, even, you know, which makes it sound dissonant in a good way, you know. That it's not supposed to fit, but somehow it fits.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. That's also something I actually really like about those harder styles, hardcore and hardstyle. They use a lot of screeches and stuff, which is just really hard detuned and LFO'd sounds, which don't actually make up a specific tone anymore, but just in a certain rhythm, and combined with other raw sounds, it just fits.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to put on that bass face when you're on a festival. Like,
yeah.
So yeah. And I think every genre has its own unique compositions, which makes it appealing to people.
Yep. Yeah. And it's fun too, because, you know, you can take, I like to think about that too, because these different genres, it can all be like all these unique sounds that characterize a genre, you know, can be made within, like, I use Serum, you know, for most everything I do. And it's fun to think about, like, there's all of this can be done by just playing around and tweaking Serum, and you can come up with something so different that, you know, genres, different styles of music have been explored just based on some kind of unique sound that's been generated through Serum. It's so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think with Serum you have one of the strongest plugins that is out there right now, and it's excellent for those really, really big sounds. I think it's the strongest wavetable synth you can find right now. I don't use it that often, but I know it's really powerful.
Yeah. What do you typically use?
I use mostly, actually, I'm hooked on Diva. Which can recreate that really warm analog 80s kind of vibe, which is perfect for my type of sound. And what I use furthermore is a lot of contact instruments for my pianos and for my strings. And I use Spire sometimes but I basically because there's some patches in there that I really like and reuse a lot, to be honest. And And these days, I purchased a remake of the Moog Model D by Behringer, the cheap one.
Oh, cool.
I think it's over here.
Yeah.
This little thing, can you see
nice.
it? Yeah, I use it.
Yeah.
It's not that expensive actually, and I use it for all my bass lines. It makes it so much easier, and I think you can probably get the same sound using Diva or anything, but just being able to twist the actual knobs while the loop is playing to get the sound that you want makes for a totally different vibe when creating music than you have to doing it with your mouse and with your finger.
Totally, yeah.
And I didn't have it the last time we interviewed, but I have this new baby right here, which is my Prophet 6.
Oh, very nice, dude. I love it.
I didn't get to play with it that much yet, but the sound is so good.
Yeah, by dude, far, those are amazing.
The biggest investment I'll be making the next few years for my music, but I just couldn't let go of the idea that I really wanted to have one. So I finally invested in one, and I've been using it a lot actually for my latest productions, but nothing released yet. But the sound from that is just, I mean, I think you can probably get almost the same sound from any soft synth, but to have it instantly that warm without any processing and just creates a whole new enthusiasm. I think it's even more about the enthusiasm of having it and having that beautiful sound directly and having to record everything in audio instantly, you know? You have to do it right the first time immediately, or you have to do it redo it entirely. It just creates a new energy in the studio. It's not necessary, so it's not necessary to invest in these hardware stuff because the software is just too good these days.
Right.
But if you just
it is fun,
it is fun. It's just a lot of fun to do it.
Yeah. And I would think too, like when you're mentioning like writing out your bass lines with it was the Moog. What was the name? Sorry,
the Model D by Behringer.
Model D.
Yeah,
by Behringer, excuse me.
But it's a remake from the Moog Model D. From the old school mono synth, which is really powerful for a certain bass line and for a certain type of lead sound. And,
right.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't have presets. It has nothing. If you just turn it on, it's on the preset that you left it in. It's just knobs.
Yeah.
So once you record something and you work on another track and use a different sound, then unless you take a photo of it, you lose everything.
Right. But that is like, as you mentioned, like being able to, write something and then at your, like right in front of you, be able to change different parameters for how the bass line is designed from the sound design perspective, like open a cutoff or something. I mean, I would think that would actually, really open up kind of a door creatively, because you're right, you don't have to go and, modify it within your DAW. You might even catch on to an idea just in that moment playing with it.
Definitely. And that's one of the biggest advantages. I mean, for the sound itself, a lot of purists will say that it sounds better with hardware, and probably it does. But I mean, the difference is so small these days compared to the good soft synths like Serum and Diva, that it's not necessary anymore. But indeed, just like you said, just actually playing a loop and playing with the keys and twisting knobs and without having to do it with your mouse opens up a whole new area of creativity. It's just fun. It makes it more fun to play around with. So it just you don't need it.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I produce a lot of stuff when I'm just sitting on the couch with my laptop. Mm-hmm. So when I'm not even in the studio, I actually like to finish my tracks when I'm just sitting on the couch. And for the creative stuff, I like to sit in the studio, and for the final mix down, of course. But it's a lot of fun to have some hardware, and it just feels cool, like a lot of people like cool big cars, and producers like showing off how much stuff they have in their studio.
yeah.
And I finally have some cool stuff as well. And like
I those think Prophet 6s are sick. Yeah,
it's so good. And I think even not too long ago, a year or something, my monitors were still standing on old study books in my last room.
Yeah.
So I decided I need to upgrade a bit to step up my game.
Yeah. That's how it develops, though. It's just and it's that it's so cool to be in this world where it can start it's cool because you can make all the music in like software, as you mentioned, which is great because it opens the door for everyone. But then you get to build out over time and add in more components. And, now you've developed this process of writing music, kind of what you're looking for. And then you can really pull out the subtleties when you get to play with hardware. You might see it just a little bit differently, or see a project differently, or get a design for, a specific lead or something just a little bit differently. And that can take a track and change that in a very drastic way, in a very beneficial way. Definitely.
Yeah. Again, a lot of fun.
I love it, dude.
Yeah, me too.
That's sick, man. This has been awesome, man. I'm on, like, I'm going to say a happy accident that we had to go round two, dude, because it's just good catching up with you and chatting,
Definitely. Well, let's maybe not in a half year, because I won't have too much new interesting stuff, but let's just do it in another year.
I like it, dude.
And we'll see when we are then.